Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm here based in San Francisco. My name is Mike Cito. I've been in sales, gosh, I started back in 1992, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So I'm one of the old guys, and I've been working in the high-tech industry all that time.
At some pretty successful companies too.
Yeah, I started my career at ADP. Now, a lot of people, I mean, I believe in ADP a lot. They do a really good job of preparing people, in all the different types of aspects of sales. So I did the hard thing. I did telemarketing. I did foot canvassing. I did mails. I mean, foot canvassing. I mean, how many people have done that before?
Yeah.
Did all of the different things that you need for sales. But what it really taught you is just really the baseline of just communication, dealing with customers, objections, all the things that you need as you're starting out your career.
Yeah. And then you moved into Sun Microsystems?
Yeah, I stayed at ADP for about, gosh, 6 years, and then I went to one of ADP's subsidiaries called AG Consulting, and that's when I really started diving into enterprise. So I started working on pre-Y2K, believe it or not, pre-Y2K consulting services, where I sold PeopleSoft, Oracle, um, ADP engagements for large companies. And then I went into public sector, so I got to dive into public sector in that as well.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, I went into Sun and I took the ride with the .com boom and
Yeah.
boom and bust.
Yeah, I
We all
remember
remember
it.
that.
I remember it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it, because we had the Y2K thing, then
Yep.
9/11, and then
Yes.
or the crash, then 9/11.
Yes. Exactly. And so I got to live through all of that. And then when you think about the '08 crash of the market, I mean, that really put a lot of pressure on companies trying to make decisions and buying stuff.
Yeah.
So we had to live through that. And then back in 2010, I started with Salesforce. I've been on the Salesforce journey for about 10 years now. So I started with Salesforce. Now I'm at a company called Financial Force, which is a company that Salesforce invests in, and we create applications all in that Salesforce platform.
Cool.
So
And,
if you think about it, I've been through kind of the whole thing, starting with ADP all the way through
yeah,
to where we are today in the cloud. It's really
great.
interesting.
And who is the persona you sell to now? Is it the CFO? Is it operations?
Well, it's a couple things. So it always ends up with the CFO, as you know. So as you're going through your journey with the customers, usually the line of business is that the application I sell is really for service delivery. So these are the guys that are running delivery organizations, usually sales operations and sales,
Yeah.
COO, IT, as well as the CFO, inevitably, who makes the end decision on the purchase.
Okay. And what's your territory look like? Do you have named accounts or geography or?
Strategic named accounts. So here, I used to be just enterprise, but then they put me just doing strategic named accounts. I just handle a handful of accounts, which is great. Allows you really to focus on these accounts and really get in there.
Yeah.
So
And are they already customers that you're expanding, or are they greenfield?
no, not all of them. So all of them definitely were not customers. So every single one of them, and as you know, in this journey with enterprise, once you sell them, you kind of keep them for life, because you build the relationships and you continue to expand your footprint into other parts of the business. And so every customer I'm dealing with now, I've sold, and I continue to expand relationships with them into other groups and divisions.
Okay. And what do you find the hardest part is
Recently, or just in general?
in general?
Well, in general, in my business, I'm usually the one doing the prospecting. I'm the one getting in myself.
Yeah.
We don't get leads. No one is really looking around,
No
hey,
one's,
can you sell me something from Financial Force? They don't go to trade shows and say, please call me and sell me something. That doesn't happen.
yeah.
So I have to really go in, learn about the business, do my research, and then be able to come back with some type of proposal or some type of vision, because it has to start with a vision
Yeah.
that applies to somebody that cares about it, right? And if you miss that in the very beginning, you're not going to go anywhere. And there's lots of people in these companies that'll waste your time at the lower levels just looking at everything, and they'll never have the decision to buy anything, right?
Right.
And so the hardest part, to answer your question, is just getting in, finding out the business, finding out who the potential sponsors are. Or do I have connections? I love LinkedIn. I
Yep.
do a lot of LinkedIn things. Do I have people in my network or somebody else's network to get me into? And then I got to figure out, what is the messaging, and does my messaging actually apply to something that somebody at the company at a higher level really cares about? And that's really the hard part, is really coming out with that impactful vision that has impact, that someone will say, okay, let's invest some time with these guys. They know what they're talking about. And really, I mean, we're not a really big company, but we've been very successful getting in there and showing impact.
Yeah. And since you have a limited territory, you've got to make it work.
Yes. And as you know, with these large companies, they don't happen overnight. So usually you've got to have deals in the pipe many months before the end of your fiscal year. So I've been very fortunate that I've just been working the territory long enough. I've been here at Financial Force, is my 8th year. And so I have a long run rate with some of these companies. And, we have projects ongoing, throughout the year. It gets a little scary at the beginning of the year after you finish your fiscal, and you're like, okay, what's the pipeline? That's where I'm in right now. We just started our fiscal. So everybody's like, what do you got for Q1? I'm like, still working on it. But,
right. They're asking you, and you don't even know your territory, or your comp plan, or you just got back from kickoff. And
that's the story. I just got back from kickoff. We just got our quotas, and they're already asking for what's the Q1 commit. And then you end up with a commit that's like, okay, I'll figure it out. But I've got the big deals in the pipe, and with strategic named accounts, you're typically very lumpy. You're not going to be very predictable, but you just got to be very consistent and have that vision going, and make sure you use your executives to get you in the right place.
And is that what your technique to get in is, through your network?
That's part of it. I'll use whatever I have at my disposals, whether it's an existing customer that they have an alliance with. A lot of times what I found recently is they buy one of our customers, acquisitions. And that's what I did with a deal that I just did this last quarter. They bought one of our longstanding customers. So I immediately went there, built the relationships, and guess what? Whenever an acquisition happens, you have a period of time that they're trying to decide what to do. Yeah. So I was able to work with those executives, because they didn't want to lose Financial Force, and work with them to build up a business case with the senior leadership. And then from there, that was the groundswell that's now turned into this massive deal. That's the largest deal our company's ever worked on now. So it's amazing. Yeah, it's great. It's really good. Nice. Yeah.
Well, what do they typically use before?
Just to tell a little bit about the application. So my application is basically it's called Professional Services Automation. So we automate the delivery process. So anything around staffing, resourcing, skills management, those types of things. And a lot of times, I mean, again, this was an untapped market 8 years ago. There wasn't really a lot of solutions. You had Oracle and SAP. And a lot of times what I find is that they're using spreadsheets to manage these businesses, or they'll use a heavily customized version of SAP that they've really bastardized to a point where it's unmanageable and very not flexible, right? Yeah. The interesting thing is, as companies continue to adopt Salesforce, what I've found is that's created a situation where data is in one place, and then there's a big problem to try and get it into their back-end systems that's very archaic, and these back-end processes. So there's a lot of mess there. Yeah. And where Financial Force helps is with this application. If we put everything in the Salesforce platform, it really just streamlines that whole process from the time they sell it, the time they deliver it, and then they actually collect money and show some revenue and margin in their back-end system.
And can you get much leverage through the Salesforce team, or is it just—
Absolutely.
You can?
Absolutely. We work very closely with them. Salesforce does a phenomenal job working wide and deep in these companies. So they become a very strategic partner for me. I also use global SIs pretty frequently, as well as boutique partners that I have as well that help us. And that all that community is you can't go in and work these deals by yourself. It's just not going to happen. Right. You have to have a team, and you have to have your partners across the board, and you got to go through that journey and good effective communication. No surprises, no games. It just doesn't work that way, because if you screw up and you do something that a partner wasn't thinking about, you can really destroy that bond that you have.
Yeah. And when I talk to reps, there's typically the two big problems. One's getting in, and the second staying in. Right?
Yeah. Well, a lot happens. What happened in my situation with this company that I just sold is they changed their whole leadership from the CEO down. So all of our sponsors started leaving, and we lost the CIO, we're losing the CFO, we lost the COO, we lost the CEO. Everybody started leaving, and then when you bring in that new management, it's like, oh my gosh, we've got to start over, and it's we still got a deal in. And we're now working towards that big deal that we have. But there's a little bit of a reset when you have those change that happens. And you can't control that. That's the unfortunate thing about what we do is you start a relationship and something changes, you have to start over. And so I'm now in the process of rebuilding those connections. I've already, investigated everybody and where we have connections, where we don't. And I've already started targeting kind of, what is our messaging and vision that we're going to have to come back and explain to the new leadership.
And is there a typical sales cycle or time-wise? It's definitely in the months and probably a year and a half, probably.
Yeah. So this one I've been working for quite some time, but I've seen sales cycles anywhere between the shortest, and that was to this day the most fun sales cycle I had was 8 months, and that's unusual for me. But usually I'm seeing 12 to 18 months for these deals. So yeah.
And how do you sell against status quo and just do nothing or stick with it? And we know what we're doing with a spreadsheet.
That's usually what happens. And that really goes back to that vision, So if you think about it, if you lose to status quo, that means you didn't get an impactful enough vision that someone really cared about. So if they're saying, great, that vision is great, but it's nice, but it really isn't impactful enough to spend millions of dollars with you. So we're just going to stay here. That means you didn't do a good enough job identifying what their key root problem was that really meant something to somebody, right? Because you need that senior sponsor to push it through.
Yeah, because the end user might champion it, but they don't have the political know-how to get it done.
No, I mean, champions are great, and you need lots of champions. But the one with the money is until you bring them in, the one you need, until you get them in on board and they actually are ready to sign something, you're going to have to fight all the way to the end.
Now, going from like ADP to Sun and now to, I think this is probably the most complex deal you've had, right?
Yeah. I'd say, well, with the exception of that time where I was working with public sector is its own animal. It's very hard because everything's done by RFP, everything is done by committee. They have all these rules about minority-owned businesses and all these things that they have that I never thought about before. It's really not, it's a little less set, right? You have to follow those rules. That's a little complex. I'd say right now what I'm dealing with is probably the most complex I've dealt with. Because cloud is also evolving and the way people negotiate with us is evolving too. I've just seen in the last 18 months, I think companies have become much more proficient in how they negotiate with cloud companies. They ask for everything we can't do, termination for convenience, 90-day payment terms, unlimited liability is what I'm dealing with right now with a very big company. Uncapped liability. I'm like, gosh, we're just we're not that big of a company. We can't give you uncapped for everything. So it's very interesting how this all works. And they all now don't want to buy these big deals up front. They want to wait through implementation and kind of the appliance mode where they pay for it when they get usage. And again, we want to pay for it when we have value. That is very difficult from our perspective because we want to sell it all up front. We don't get revenue until they pay for licenses. So that's an anomaly we're dealing with right now, which is companies want to do a pilot and then from the pilot grow into something bigger.
So it's very different than the on-prem.
Yes. On-prem, the Oracle model, I guess, where they say, okay, give us several $1 million and we don't care if you deploy
perpetual license forever.
Perpetual forever. And as we buy companies, we charge you more. That doesn't work as much anymore. And that's what you're seeing right now is companies are really moving away as they adopt more of this cloud model. I think Amazon's done a fantastic job, just kind of the pay-as-you-go model. And that's why they've done so well. And as you see that also is having an effect on the cloud companies because they want us to do that model where just, let us just deploy it and then we'll pay for it when it's actually being used.
Yeah, that's difficult. And how do you sell against that? Is it just
Well,
education or?
it's education. It's partially part of it is we really can't operate in that model in something. So what we end up usually compromising on is a paid for pilot, where we start the pilot and we run through a period of time, and then from there we have some metrics in place on how they ramp their deal and how, I mean, there's all these things that we can do to handle that. But the customer has to be willing to invest. It's none of this. You do everything,
You
and
do
then we
everything
just
and we'll let you know what
yeah.
it's worth.
Yeah, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And if you get to that point, that what that means is, again, it goes back to your vision. You didn't do a good enough job presenting the value of that, right?
Oh,
And customers don't want to see a very long implementation cycle that somewhere down the road they may or may get value. You have to be able to present that in the very beginning and show them very quick wins along the way as you're going through your milestones.
yeah. Now, given that you've been there pretty much 8 years now, I mean, that's a long time for a rep. It's a good sign. How have you seen your skills evolve?
Well, it's actually quite interesting. I've become more attuned with customers. You have to listen more. I mean, the reps, you always think listening is really important. This has really forced me to really dig deep and figuring out really what is this person trying to tell me, and what's the underlying message there?
Yeah.
Is there something there that he's just giving me an objection that just went right over my head? So I see my listening skills have really gotten better, being more in tune with the customer. The fact that I've been doing this as long as I have been, I see customers say kind of the same things in many different ways. And so
Yeah.
that experience of being through it, I can actually help the customer feel better, where I can give examples of, hey, this customer had the same situation and concern, and here's how we overcame it. I can bring up references of customers that I've done business with and help them feel better. But just handling the objections, I think, is another one that's really helped. As you spend more and more time with focusing on one area, your skills of being able to handle those objections becomes invaluable. So I help a lot of our associates here with some of these things, whether it's deal creation or handling objections, or how to present in a really difficult situation, how to deal with various competitors. Those are all things that become very valuable over time.
And how do you become better at it? Is it just osmosis, being around it so much, or do you?
Well, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of research. I read a lot of things. I've gotten a lot better reading 10Ks.
Yeah.
I was good at reading 10Ks, but now I've taken a little different spin on what I look for in 10Ks, looking for different trends. And what does that trend mean? What do I interpret that into? Some value that we can do. A lot of times people look at a 10K and it's like, oh my goodness, what does this mean?
What is it? Yeah.
What is, and really what you have to do, and I teach a lot of reps this, I take a step back. And the things that you really look for is, what does this mean? When the operational expenses are real high, what does that actually mean? And how can you make that something valuable that your product can help? Maybe they did an acquisition. Maybe there's something where they're concerned about a competitor.
Yeah.
What does all that mean, and how do you help them? Customers have issues with customer sat, right? That's a big one. These are all areas that we can come and put as part of our vision, right? And so as I've become a little more proficient of creating those stories, it's worked out really well for me, because again, the vision is not the end all be all. As you know, you have to take it, test it, and then validate it, and then evolve it as you learn more, as you're engaging with the executives. And they're going to tell you right away whether you're in or out very quickly.
Yeah, because they're asking themselves, why are we doing this?
Exactly. And I have a pretty high percentage of, when I reach out and finally get that vision, I usually get a meeting. I'm usually pretty successful of getting them to think about it. And most of the time, what I find, most execs are okay assigning another executive to work with me for a period of time.
Yeah.
It's just you just got to stay, again, you just got to continue to be willing to say, okay, I don't know everything. You got to be humble, right? Because that's another thing, is if I go in and say, this is it, I locked it down, you're going to miss it.
Right.
You have to be humble and say, look, you have to take everybody's opinion. If a partner says, no, you're way off, you have to take that all into consideration and be willing to change your vision and direction if you have to.
And how do you become good at communicating about what they care about? Because
specific to the customer.
yeah, because
Yeah.
most salespeople, they know about their product, their customers, And they're good for
Yeah.
about an hour conversation.
Well, I always give the example of this and I do this with the reps. Is okay, you're now talking to a CFO, and you go in and you say, okay, look at my screens, look how pretty they are, look at all these menus, look at the drop down.
Yeah.
CFOs don't care. If you can't go in there and say, look, congratulations on a great quarter. I see that you guys are concerned with some extra expenses you've had, and your margins are a little low, and you'll be able to, bring it back to what they care about. You guys are, you have some issues right now with some turnover with some of your key resources. We have an application here that can help you with evolving and managing that a little bit better. A different conversation, a very different conversation than just going in, here's a screen. And I mean, I don't think I demo to any CFO ever.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work out well for you.
That's it, because you got to kind of prepare for that. You got to think
Yes.
through, how do they view the world?
Yes.
And what do they care about that's adjacent to my product?
That's right. And each executive is going to be a little different. Like the CEO is going to care about shareholder value more than anything. CFO is going to care about all expenses, margins, revenue, all of that stuff, right? Operations is COO, everything about operations and efficiencies, you get it. There's a class, I think if you looked at my profile, there's a class that I took that I really believe in. It's called Executive Conversation. Have you heard of those guys?
No.
They're basically ex-CXOs that go around and talk to salespeople about when I was a CFO and the salesperson came in, and they would give examples of letters that people, or things that people try to get in. And he's like, can you believe this guy came to me and told me this? And then what they do is they tell you what would most resonate. You've got 15 seconds with me. What is the thing that you're going to say that's going to get me to actually listen? Yeah. And so they're fantastic. I mean, it's basically all ex-CXOs in varying positions, and they just teach salespeople, how do you talk to me? If I'm a CIO, how do you talk to me? Yeah. If I'm a CFO, how do you talk to me? And it's that really changed the way I looked at, how I approach some of these executives.
That's it. I tell people to go talk to their CFO.
Yeah, exactly.
And, it's like, how do you get evaluated? What do you care about?
Yeah.
If a salesperson was to call you, why would you take their call?
Exactly. And it's a great thing. And I talk to our CFO all the time, and he has a very, very different view on how he looks at things. And I'm like, I hate to sell to you. You'd be horrible.
They assume everything's a lie.
Oh, you're bringing back some good memories there. Yeah. No, but it's a good learning. I mean, that's all part of the things that as salespeople have to do, is we've got to continue to evolve our skill set and our craft. That's an excellent suggestion. Talk to your executives. And I actually took a presentation I did for that big customer, and I shared it with my CFO. I was like, what do you think about this? And he poked holes all over it. I'm like, oh God. I thought it was really good, but he really poked a lot of holes in it, and I really changed my messaging.
That's it. And like, go talk to procurement. Go talk to your legal people. Yeah. Go talk to your CIO.
Yeah.
And listen to the podcast that they listen to. They're dry as can be, but that's how they think, right?
Yes, it is. I'm like, how do you sit here and listen to this?
Tax code, EBITDA, all this stuff. You're like,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. But you've got to be able to communicate with them where they are.
Yeah, at their level. And it's about relationship, right? It's about relating to their issue and their problem. And as salespeople, that's what we have to do. We have to be chameleons. We have to be able to switch and change to make it relevant for them. Because if not, you're just going to be another lizard. You're not going to be something to care about, it's another lizard.
And if you even can just come up with the great questions, what does a CFO want to hear, want to talk about? And how do you get them to talk about it?
Yeah, exactly.
What do they care about? Why does it matter to them?
Yeah, exactly. They really don't care about your screens. Honestly,
not at all.
They don't care about your screens. They don't care about how cool it is and it's on the Salesforce platform. They really don't care about that stuff. What they care about is, at the end of the day, is how are you going to reduce their expenses, improve their margins, make them more profitable.
Survive an audit.
Survive an audit. Yes. And you also got to know, when I listen to every of my customers, quarterly and annual, announcements that they have, and the calls, and you learn a lot from that.
Right.
And the other thing too is when they go dark, they're usually preparing for that, weeks in advance. So your timing has to be good too, because if you're trying to talk to them about in the middle of them prepping for their annual, call, you're not going to be, you're going to be an irritation, so you
Right.
have to know that as well.
Yeah, because you basically newsjack what they're talking about and worried
Yes.
about, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because that's what's on their mind.
Yeah, exactly. There's one thing that I always look at that the CEO, that some companies do and some don't, is the shareholder letter. So the shareholder letter tells basically in a very brief summary everything that they're doing well, things that they're concerned about, and it's a really nice summary. So I point a lot of salespeople to the shareholder letter if you can get one. If they're publicly traded, just get a copy of it. You can find it. It's usually, you just got to look for it a little bit. But that's been one of the things that really just kind of helps me hone, those things that, okay, this is what the company really cares about. And here's what they think they're doing well. And here's what they think they're not doing so well. And they do that in a couple pages. And this is fantastic.
And what drives you as a sales rep?
Money.
Don't beat around the bush.
Operated. I'm right to the point. It's money, right? I mean, it's definitely providing for the family. The other thing is really the challenge. I mean, I'm all about the challenge. How do I take a situation where no one has any communication and then turn it into a multi-million-dollar deal in a relationship for my company? That's what motivates me. How do I transform the relationships from where they are today, which is nothing? That's that challenge, the motivation, and the money that comes with it is really what drives me.
Because you probably don't run into the classic beauty contest sale where they're looking at you and someone else. You're starting it from scratch.
Yeah, if I get in a situation where someone says, "Here's an RFP," a lot of times I don't respond to those because you're part of the beauty. You're part of the beauty contest, and you're done.
Yeah.
Usually, what happens is I create the beauty contest. I help write the rules, and they bring in other people to round the track. As they've already, and I even help write the RFP in some situation. That's a really strong position of power in any situation. And most of the time, what I'm dealing with is no decision, or stay as we do, or it's never me and this other competitor. It's usually
someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And is that what you look for in other reps? That money motivation? Because when I don't see that, I've never seen a successful salesperson.
well, if they don't answer that question first as money, then you've got a problem, because it's like, oh, I just want to talk to people.
I want to be, I'm a people person.
I'm a people. I hate that. Okay. I absolutely hate that.
That's what support is for.
Okay. No, it's not going to work that way. No. So money operation is very critical for all salespeople. I mean, I think you and I kind of come from the same cloth, I think.
Yeah.
But I look for that a lot in salespeople, is what is their motivation? And definitely money's got to be one of them, because that's what it's all
you're
about.
here. Right.
And you're not here just to make 100%. You're here to make 150, 200% and beyond. That's when you really start to make money, right? And so I look for that drive, because you can't teach that to people. You can teach
how, you can't teach why.
No, I can't teach people how to be hungry. I can't teach you how to be, go, 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 go. That persistence I cannot teach. You cannot teach persistence. You can act like you're persistent, but you can't teach it.
And what would you say is kind of like what you do better than you see 80% of the other salespeople do?
Oh, I am incredibly competitive and persistent, probably more so than anybody. I think that's where I shine, is I work really, really hard. I try to work smart, but I think I outwork the other people. And that's really my competitors. Outmaneuver, outgoing through, you have to outsell people, right? Because these people are good out there. And I think what I think I do is I network really well with people. I get a great alignment. But I just work hard, and you have to just keep it on.
And where's that come from? That's something you learned, the way you were raised, a particular activity?
Yeah, well, I've been in competitive sports for a long time. I've been doing martial arts for a really long time.
Yeah.
The latest thing I do, and you believe this or not, is I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Okay.
Wow.
So I'm 52 years old, and I'm there, fighting every day with, anywhere from teenager to 20 something really buffed out guys, and fighting. So, And that's for me, just the struggle of just being able to fight another person and be able to submit them or whatever it is. I mean, it just, that's my person. My person is I'm very competitive, right? And I found something that I've been doing for a long time that just allows me to have that outlet. And again, it just drives it also helps me clear my head. If there's a problem I can't figure out at work, I'll go and I'll train for a few hours and I'll come back and like, okay, I got
Clear-headed.
it,
And
clear-headed.
there's a lot of transferability of that mindset to selling.
I think so. I think so. You got to. I
Practice.
mean, the thing about martial arts, but also jujitsu in general, is you got to be humble. Salespeople have to be humble, and I get beat sometimes. I get choked out. I get, things happen. I don't get hurt, but it does happen, and you have to just tap out. And that just giving into the fact that okay, I lost. But then going back and said, okay, I got another shot. I'm going to try this again, and then try something a little different. That's sales, right? I mean, sometimes you got to tap out and reset, and then go for it again. But if you tap out and walk away, then there's your problem right there. The problem is you.
You missed the lesson, and the grit of coming back.
Yeah, the mindset that I have with every prospect I have, and this is the mindset I tell everybody, is sales are not lost; they're just delayed.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just delayed. It just means, okay, maybe you lost your competition. At some point, you just keep on there. At some point, you'll have another shot to maybe try and do it again. Or maybe you didn't do a good job with your vision and decided to stay with status quo. That doesn't mean it's no forever.
Right.
This person didn't grant you a meeting. Guess what? There's 100 other people for you to call that you can maybe try and call them too. It's the same thing, right? And so my point, and that's why I always tell people, if you give up, then you've lost.
Right.
And that's the only time you've lost is when you walk away or give up. And so by telling people sales are never lost, they're just delayed.
Right.
And that's the mindset of a salesperson, that you have to just go for it and just keep going and going and going. That's what they pay us for.
Cool. Hey, it's been a great conversation. Where can people go to follow you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. So, Mike Cito on LinkedIn. So you can absolutely follow me there. I welcome any comments. I hope this was helpful for everybody.